Hello. I hope everyone had a good, relaxing summer holiday. I know I needed one. Welcome to what for now is the last episode of Solid State of Truth. I'm a fighter by nature. When I see something badly wrong, I step in. When someone tries to shut me up, I push back harder. I started Solid State of Truth mainly to name what was wrong and go after it. Before I got into this fight, I made sure it was one I could win. And I knew I'd win because what was going on was so obviously wrong. Now the authorities are taking it from here, so I can get back to building something new. But I still want to tell you about the first con. The one that started this whole snowball rolling. This is something I shut my eyes to for a long time. Because when you think of yourself as an honest and righteous person, it's hard to admit you're being played. There's an old saying, it's much easier to fool someone than to convince them that they have been fooled. I shut my eyes to CT Coating's lies for a long time too. When we at Nordic Nano Group started working with them, they made it very clear of having other partners and customers as well. That's how they built the pressure. Get the millions in now, or the first production lines go to somewhere else, and we are too late, and the company is worth far less than it could be, if only we're the first to bring the solar cells and the miracle batteries to the market. We knew there was one company ahead of us in the line, a Swedish firm called Holyvolt. You know that feeling as a Finn. Some Swedish company gets there first and discovers the big miracle. And you come in second. Forever second to Sweden. So, when CT Coating told us their thing with the Holyvolt maybe wasn't so smooth, and that they might be falling out, we were secretly glad. They screwed it up. We would not screw this up. And then came even better news. CT Coating had demanded back a pre-production line they'd already delivered because they were furious that Holyvolt had gone public saying the technology was their invention and theirs alone. And Herr Dr. Hölzenbein, this eccentric genius inventor, just couldn't take that. Oh, this is what we were told. Not to mention that Donut Lab later on did exactly the same, but then it did not seem to matter as long as the millions kept flowing. But here's what actually happened. Holyvolt had worked with CT Coating for a while, and they wanted real proof that technology worked before making any further investments. CT Coating couldn't give them that proof. So Holyvolt quietly walked away and asked to shut down the joint venture, Holyvolt, they'd set up as well. We didn't ask for proof. We believed the German sales pitch. We sent more millions because any moment now there'd be a new miracle paste. Print from it and you'd get batteries and solar panels so much better that starting production with the old paste, which always needed just a little bit more work, would make no sense. They told us, among other things, that the current version of the battery paste still had lithium in it. But they were working hard, so the ones that come next would not. And this was still in March this year. Now that I understand a bit more, I see how foolish I was. That's just not how battery paste gets developed. Developing battery materials is not just some sandbox game where you figure out how much water to mix into the sand so your sand castle holds together. Not too wet, not too dry, just right. This was a lot more complicated than that. And now CT coating had found itself an unbelievable cash cow in Finland, one that swallowed everything it was told, as the deep tech understanding of batteries was totally missing in the company. But because we'd heard they'd cut ties with the other companies and then that we were first in line, we were in a rush. Find the investors now, get the money in now, or lose this once in a lifetime luck we'd supposedly been handed. When I came out with my concerns back in April this year, I didn't yet understand how deep this thing went. People started reaching out to me, former employees, partners, investors, company reps from Donut Lab, Verge and CT Coating alike. This was far bigger than I'd ever imagined. One of the first calls I got told me CT Coating had been running this exact con for at least 10 years on companies just like Nordic Nano. And there are at least a dozen of companies like this, maybe more. But the people in those companies did not want to go public, because keeping their name clean matters too much to them. And I get that completely. These firms put money in to get their hands on the production line and the miracle paste you could supposedly print solar cells and batteries and who knows what else from. And they'd rather go bankrupt and write it off as normal startup risk and get on with their careers than come out and say, I believed in a miracle. I got my investors to believe in it too. I got screwed and now the money is gone. That's why I started Solid State of Truth, because I decided that this stops here. Believing in a miracle isn't a crime. Knowing the miracle doesn't work and still squeezing money out of it, that has to be punished. And to every investor, let me be clear. The fool isn't the one who believes the promises and the materials he's shown. The fool is the one making those promises, knowing they are lies and thinking he'll never get caught. I know investors are still being told Donut Lab supposedly has exclusive rights to this coming miracle battery and its technology. On top of the fact that the miracle battery doesn't exist and never will, there's another problem. CT Coating is still running its con. I was still at Nordic Nano when exclusivity deals were being worked out. Well, now I know that was just another CT Coating con too. After I went public, companies got in touch with me from the Netherlands, among other places, who are still being sold the same miracle paste and the same production line exclusively by Next Echo, CT Coating's marketing company. And yes, I have been to Germany several times to admire the production line they are building. A year and a half after my first visit, it was exactly in the same state. They were still building it. They also showed us solar panels in Germany installed on the factory roof and gave us the amazing numbers those panels supposedly produced. But somehow, after installing them, there wasn't a single one of these panels left. Nothing they could actually put our hands to show us. Right before I went to the media, Nordic Nano finally got permission, after lots of begging, to go pick up one solar cell element or solar panel from Germany. But it was so worn out that they warned us it might not hit the numbers they'd been promising anymore, why it was so worn and what results it had been produced. That, of course, they didn't say. Nobody has ever seen a working solar panel or a battery come out of CT Coating's production line. All we've seen is thermal elements being printed in a lab, and not even those in real use. So we don't know if they work. I've since found German reporting on these same non-working thermal elements from years back, and those were called a hoax too. If CT coating really had a production line that the batteries tested at VTT came off of, why has nobody at Nordic Nano or Donut Lab ever seen the equipment they came from, when we'd already sent millions over there? That's why I, for one, believe that CT Coating just ordered these batteries from somewhere and claims they made them. They had a pile of used batteries which they said came off of their production line and had been tested at Mercedes with great results. After that, the batteries were sent to Donut Lab for testing in Estonia. Donut Lab tested them successfully, they said, and then decided to go big in Las Vegas. What they didn't get was that yes, the batteries take a fast charge, but they wreck themselves doing it, and they'd have maybe 100 cycles at most. That only came out in the VTT's tests. And nobody bothered to check where the batteries came from, who actually made them, or what was inside them. Those same used batteries got packed into that first beautiful next generation Verge motorcycle. And that is why it couldn't go to a customer. Because if someone opened it up, they'd have seen the batteries have lithium in it too, and that the bike's battery didn't have many charge cycles left. And Donut Lab was ready to sign onto all of this and sell pre-orders for production lines. All on the belief that one day the perfect promised paste would finally be ready, and then you just start printing miracle batteries on every corner. As one of Nordic Nano's founders, I had a profit-sharing deal for if the company ever got sold or went public. In the spring this year, the value of my share came to about 1.5 million euros. After the Helsingin Sanomat story ran in the spring, many people asked me why I didn't just sell my share and keep quiet. But whose money was that really? The investors. Investors' money that didn't even exist anymore, because it had already gone to fat monthly salaries and to Germany. Every time we went to Germany, I quietly wondered why the next Echo guys always had the newest BMW Roadsters, every single time. Always right after we'd sent over another million. The money of investors from South Ostrobothnia and of Finnish taxpayers is tied up in the good life these people are living. A small group of people, my former colleagues among them, are honestly still living the good life, no guilt at all, and they are still paying for it by telling lies they know full well aren't true. And on top of that, they keep a lawyer army running, the kind that costs hundreds of thousands, which Donut Lab has set on me to keep me quiet. Quiet about trade secrets. A trade secret is something an outsider benefits from if they get hold on it. So how can a product that doesn't exist and never will benefit anyone? And how can that be a trade secret? There's just no sense in it, I'm telling you. The one board member at Donut Lab who represented the investors finally figured this out at the beginning of August and left the board. Two Nordic Nano founders took his place, men who are now Donut Lab employees also. So, on Donut Lab's board, nobody is watching out for the investors anymore. So much for good governance, and welcome to the little magic circle of secrecy. Let's take here a little story, which I already told in the previous episode, Midsummer Nights Tale, just before the midsummer. But as it was in Finnish, here goes also in English. When I realized that this was a world-class scam, It was when CT Coating delivered so-called pre-production equipment to Nordic Nano, only after we had paid them 7 million euros. The equipment in question was delivered to us at Nordic Nano in Imatra, and I was really excited that now, finally, things are starting to happen. The first delivery came, and somehow the most important part, the nano printer, had been forgotten from the delivery. The delivery came in their own small van. Two guys, neither of whom spoke English, brought a dryer unit and just said, well, the other part didn't fit in this van. And at that point I started to feel like, oh my god, now the Finnish boys are being screwed. Well, the actual printer came a couple of weeks later by the same guys in the same small van, where they now had managed it to fit in. But then, when it arrived, what a thrill, it didn't work. It didn't work because it had one sensor broke during transport. And then, unexpectedly, we couldn't get these sensors anywhere. Well, of course, we complained and said, could you deliver the sensor now? And they said, yes, they can be delivered. But they are really hard to get anywhere. That if you give us 2 million more, in addition to these 7 million that you have already paid, that would smoothen things up. Well, at that point, it was stated that now this is not how it works. That now you just send the sensor anyway. And then they kindly sent it and even sent training staff to install and train us on how to use this equipment. But then, when the sensor was put in place, the drying UV lamps in the drying unit unexpectedly didn't work. And then when we asked about them, it was stated that yes, only one supplier in the whole Europe supplies them, and that unfortunately it has gone bankrupt, and it will take a long time to get them. Let's just say that at that point I realized that now we are really being totally screwed. And at that point I started to act. At that point I started to internally raise these concerns of mine, came out that we have to inform our investors, and when no one was interested, then after that I filed a criminal report. Then I filed a report to the Financial Supervisory Authority, and then I went public with these things, because I decided that this bullshit would end now. But like I said, now it's my turn to move forward and start building new instead of tearing down the old. The snowball's been pushed and it's already rolling downhill so fast it doesn't need my push anymore. The final slide is well underway. To investors, my advice: file a criminal complaint and get in touch with Kari Uoti at kari.uoti@oikeus.pro. I have talked with him and he's promised to help investors try to get at least some of their money back. This has been the final episode of Solid State of Truth about this modern day version of the Sampo, the magic machine from the Kalevala, Finland's national epic. The Sampo, too, was only ever a dream, never a real machine of wonders. The belief in it and the greed around it drove people to do things nobody could defend in the end. Same thing here. And that's why I want to step back from this whole miracle mill myself now. I started Solid State of Truth so that wrongdoing would come to light. If someone ever wants their voice heard, I might come back to stand up for them. For now, I'm setting this project aside and just helping the authorities finish these matters. Thank you to everyone who had the courage to reach out and tell me your story. I'm sure I haven't managed or remembered to reply to everyone. Thank you anyway, to every one of you, for your messages and for your encouragement. The only thank you I want to name is to my wife. She stood beside me through all of this. Even though there's someone in her own family on the other side of the fight. And even though that's why she's been put under pressure, the rest of us just can't imagine. It's asked more of her than anyone should ever have to give. I know this way of speaking out is very unfinished. In Finland, staying quiet is a virtue and being modest is a value. And I've got neither one when it comes to something this wrong. I'm not built for being quiet, and fighting is in my blood. I'll gladly carry plenty of burdens on my shoulders, but injustice isn't one of them. Wishing you all a sunny, successful autumn. Thank you.